We seek to gather insights into a host of issues, especially concerning religion. Though hugely helpful, religion becomes a prison if it is not transcended. Beyond religion, we meet as human beings, free to love and cherish each other. Here, we celebrate our freedom to be richly and rationally human.
Okay, so my next question is, how do I connect to humanity?
Yes. And why should we connect to humanity? Yes. Well, the question is, how do I connect to humanity and why should I connect to humanity? I think this question is best answered through an illustration. Better still, let me use a parable that Jesus used. In the 13th chapter of Matthew's Gospel, Jesus uses the parable of the mustard seed. He says, if a mustard seed remains alone, it remains there.
Yes.
If a mustard seed does not fall down and die, it remains alone. On the other hand, if it falls down, dies, sprouts, it comes up into a plant, and then, with a little bit of poetic exaggeration, he says that its branches are spread to the end of the world, birds are there, come and build their nest on, so on and so forth. Now, what does Jesus mean? Everything that God created is interconnected.
That's right.
I mean, if you believe that God is the creator and everything has originated in God, everything from the inanimate to the highest form of life, which is human beings, everything is interconnected. At the lowest levels, shall we say at the mineral level, we may not see any life in the usual sense of the term. But maybe at the particle, subatomic level or subatomic level, there is life. I'm not a scientist to go into those details. Surely there is movement. There is no question about it. And simple high school physics will tell you that everything in the world is moving. Even a log of wood is a colony of movement. So there's life in it. Of course, when it comes to the vegetable world, you can say it, the animal world. Then when it comes to human beings, it is you have superadded to physical movement, you have also consciousness. So the point I want to emphasize is that there is this beautiful sense of interconnectedness. Therefore, it is not possible, nor is it desirable, for anyone to live as a single entity, like a standalone entity. Right? Like a lone tree standing on a hill without any even grass around. See? Unconnected to anything else. You remember in the Old Testament, after the first man was created, Adam was created, God looks at him and says that it is not good that man be alone.
That's right.
So immediately this principle of interconnectedness is introduced.
Yes.
So it is so basic to human life. Now if you look at a tree in nature, it's living in a state of beautiful, natural, spontaneous interconnectedness. The tree is connected to the earth, the whole of the earth through its roots. The tree is connected to the distant sun through the chloroform in its leaves, because that's how it manufactures its food. The tree is connected to the distant sea because it is nourished and renewed by rains. And who knows what are the mysterious things that are happening all the time. And the tree is part of all that, right? Now, when you with this as the background, when you look at the human species, we are sitting and discussing like this today. Okay? You're holding an iPad in your hand, there's a microphone here, there's a camera there. But when I look at all these things, I know that hundreds and hundreds of years of human struggle and progress have gone into all of this. We are part of that. Absolutely. When a light burns here, I feel connected to Edison. Right? When I use electricity, when I use an automobile, when I use a phone, when I use textiles, I feel connected to the people who have worked for it. Right? So every person who has made a contribution to human well-being becomes a permanent part of our heritage. Maybe that person lived in United Kingdom, or maybe he lived in Italy, lived in Germany. What difference does it make? But if somebody has contributed 1 rupee worth of value to human life, that person, or $1 worth of value to life, that person becomes an integral part of my own life.
Right.
He may have lived 500 years before me. Galileo, I feel connected to Galileo. I feel connected to Bruno. I feel connected to Newton. I feel connected to Karl Marx. I feel connected to Aristotle, to Plato, to Hegel, to Kant, to Kalidasa, to Shakespeare, to Dostoevsky in Russia. I mean, I feel connected to all of them, right? So now it is possible for me to live as though these things don't exist, but then I am the poorer for it. I actually consign myself to famine if I live like that. Unfortunately, many people, I would say a majority of the people are living like that, completely cut off from all this wonderful interconnectedness of personal enrichment. For example, when I read classic literature, or Athenian philosophy, or European literature, or German philosophy, or French sociology, and the empirical philosophy of the English people, I feel deeply nourished. When I read Indian classics, and I don't read Sanskrit, but I read Indian classics in translation, I feel deeply nourished. When I read Jewish literature and history, I feel greatly nourished. So to feel that one is part of all this, it's a wonderful thing. That's why I cannot stop reading. I have to read. I have to get into the spirit of the times. When I read Aristotle, I feel that my mind is resonating with with the mind of Aristotle. No? Now, this I believe is a very rich life. And I feel sad when people live like gloomy, lonely figures walking in the wilderness of life, cut off from all of these things. And it doesn't have to be, and it should not be like that. Now, for example, many Christians may not like what I'm going to say now. When I read the teachings of Jesus Christ, I can connect Jesus' teachings to a whole lot of Greco-Roman philosophy, particularly to the Stoic philosophy of the times. There are many ideas in Jesus Christ that I can connect to Plato and Aristotle. So there are resonances of Buddhist. Whether or not Jesus was exposed to Buddhist teaching directly, I don't know. But I am certainly in a position to capture echoes which resonate everywhere. Therefore, through these vibrations, intellectual, philosophical vibrations, those spiritual interconnections, I sense a oneness of all of these things. I'm not saying that everything that people have said is right or helpful. Okay. There are many wicked things that people have said. But I should be able to leave that aside and establish a connection within myself and create a universe of integrated ideas which contribute to my inner richness. Right? Now, if I'm cut off from all this, I feel weak, I feel cheap. Right? Just as Jesus said, now to use another simile, in John chapter 15, verse 1 to 8, he says, you see, I am the vine, you are the branches. Now, he's actually introducing the idea of interconnectedness. See, if I'm the branch, Jesus is the vine, I'm connected to the vine.
Yes.
All right? Okay. But then the vine has other branches. All these other branches are connected to each other through the vine.
Through the vine, yes. Yeah.
All right? Absolutely. And together, the vine and the branches are connected to the whole universe. Now, this interconnectedness to me is the beauty of life. It is the banquet of life. Now, I cannot understand, I want to emphasize this, how people can close their eyes and their minds to it and lead a life of famine, intellectual, spiritual, cultural famine. And it's becoming more and more an issue now because people are succumbing to this culture of pleasure seeking, consumerist way of life where an individual lives only for himself. And the more you allow yourself to be submerged in pleasure, the more you're cut off from everybody else. That's a problem with pleasure. It cuts you off. And the more you're cut off from everybody, the more impoverished you become. And the more impoverished you become, the more criminal you become. In fact, one of my favorite novels is a novel by the Russian novelist Dostoevsky. It's called Crime and Punishment. It's a story of a university dropout called Raskolnikov. Now, he drifts into crime. He's a university student. In those days, it was not possible for everyone to have university education. He was a brilliant student. He became a drop-off, and he relapses into a very lonely way of life. And in that context, he degenerates into crime. And the rest of the novel is the most powerful investigation of how the mind of man disintegrates under the burden of guilt. It's something that I would commend my readers to read. It's one of the most unforgettable experiences in a man's life to read Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, though his other novel, which is Brothers Karamazov, is rated higher. Crime and Punishment is obviously my favorite. And so I just want to emphasize this, that God has designed us to live in community and in communion.
Right.
Communion not just with the people we like, but with the whole of the universe, with nature, with the society, and with also a sense of humanity. Now I will, at this point, introduce just one more idea and I stop this. You see, it's important for us to emphasize this particularly today, because what we see globally is the ascendancy of jingoistic, aggressive, nationalist ideologies and sentiments, which pits nation against nation, people against people. So these are political projects that seek to dismember, to break, to cut people apart, to bruise societies, to cripple individual life. This is an agenda of destruction, right? Now, in such a context, we must remember a thinker like, say, Rabindranath Tagore, who in his book, beautiful book titled Nationalism, he says, if I have to choose between nationalism and love for humanity, I would rather choose humanity.
Okay.
Now, that's the stand of an enlightened man. A small man would say, I don't care for humanity, my country first,
Yes.
my country, right or wrong. And that, people may applaud him, because people also don't understand that this is a death principle actually. You must certainly love your country. I love my country. But the fact that I love my country does not mean that I have to hate humanity. In fact, if I'm a sensible person, I will harmonize my love for my country with my love for humanity. There is no conflict, and there should be no conflict between the two. So if conflict is posited by anyone, these are the people who are completely cut off from the broad spectrum of life and who are alienated from the interconnectedness of life and are therefore leading a poor life. So, therefore, I once again emphasize, it's important for us to stay connected, engaged, just as every element of life in nature is involved with each other. We must be involved with each other. That's our freedom. The freedom to love, the freedom to care, the freedom to share, the freedom to celebrate life together.